So I wanted to make this video for a while, but I kept waiting for the ban list. Of course, because of Worlds and everything, we couldn't really get the ban list before, but now it's just a matter of time before it drops. Nevertheless, there are already a lot of small events coming up really soon, and they might actually occur before we get the list. And in case that happens, you have to be ready. Therefore, I'm bringing you guys my top 10 best decks for the upcoming format with the current card pool. Oh, and by the way, even if we include Soulburner Volcano, which is Salamangreat and Volcanic support, it doesn't really change anything. Sorry. With that being said, let's jump right into it. As soon as you smash the like and subscribe button, my man! Anyways, in the number 10 position, I have Cyber's decks as a whole, but especially Marincess and Mathmech. Mathmech at Ignister is also really good because the Arrival Cyberus is insane and not a lot of decks can really out it. A good player can go really far with the Cyber's decks considering the fact that they can play a lot of hand traps and can also play with one card. They do lose to Floodgates a lot in general, especially there can only be one and Skill Drain. But for the most part, they're great and they're also really safe to play. Number 9 is Unchained, although I will admit that it could actually be way higher on the list. This deck is ridiculous because you can easily set up 4+ interruptions using one single card, and you can actually play through a lot of hand traps. I mean, you're never really searching, so Droll is useless, and you can easily just pass on like 4 summons, so Nibiru does nothing. And all of your cards float, so you really don't care about cards that destroy your cards. And this deck completely shits on trap decks because Floodgates don't really do much, and again, lovely Labyrinth and a bunch of the destruction cards that Labyrinth play will do nothing against Unchained. Clearly the deck has massive potential, but it's extremely difficult to play and also deck build correctly. If you enjoy grindy decks and resourceful decks, Unchained is definitely the deck for you. Okay, so a few of the decks I'm about to cover all share something in common, which is the reason why they are in this video. Number 8 is ABC because of Revolution Synchron, which made the deck so much better because now it's so much easier to go into Ancient Fairy Dragon. The deck plays 3 engines, the Therion, the Adventurer, as well as the ABC, so you have a lot of gas. I think it is a fantastic deck, but it really has to be built to absolute perfection. And it's not easy to do because a lot of the ratios are really awkward, so at least you get rewarded for figuring it out. It's also a fun and fan favorite deck as well, so why not? Number 7 is actually a deck I used to believe would be the best by a long shot, but I actually changed my mind about it. I am talking about Manadome, and just like ABC, it can play Revolution Synchron into Ancient Fairy Dragon. But you don't have to play Revolution Synchron because there's just so many other options, which speaks volume on how broken it is. The ceiling level is extremely high because it can consistently go into Crimson Dragon, into Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend, King Calamity, but the issue is when you get hand trapped, especially by Droll. Droll pretty much is a turn skipper against you, well, at least like 80% of the time, and Nibiru maybe like 50% of the time. But the lower impact hand traps like Ash Veiler and Imperm are actually really bad against Manadome. And also, if people are playing board breakers like Dark Ruler, Kaijus, and Forbidden Droplet, they might not be able to stop the King Calamity combo. But then again, building the correct Manadome list is extremely difficult. You have to account for people's hand traps and also going second. And the deck has like a non-existent margin of error, so if you mess up, you lose. Anyways, number 6 is, yet again, another deck that can play Revolution Synchron, but this time better than everyone else. I am talking about Brave Synchron, which might actually have what it takes to become the best deck one day. It doesn't lose to any board breaker because you can even hand loop your opponent for 5 cards if you really want to. And it is extremely consistent because all you really need for the full combo is just a single Junk Speeder resolving. That's it, that's all. Junk Converter plus any tuner, including even Ash if you want to, is full combo, or if you have like the Brave Token Engine, you can combo off with 2 cards. But I do have some criticism for this deck. Although the ceiling is extremely high, unfortunately the floor is really low. It's kind of like a hardcore combo deck where you either do everything or you do nothing. There's no in between, like you're never really doing something at like 50% or you're never really making half of a board. The hands that do not lead to Junk Speeder don't really do anything, and when you get stopped on the Junk Speeder, you also don't really do anything. Unless you're playing the pure build, in which case you might be able to keep extending if you have cards like Doppel Warrior. But the most played version competitively is the Brave Token version, because at least you get to play Baron de Fleur really early on. The good news is, even cards like Droll and Nibiru aren't even that good against the deck. Sometimes you can actually play through it, and when I say through it, I mean assuming that they resolve, not just negating them with Baron. But then again, this deck just doesn't really feel good enough going second because you don't really play a lot of good going second cards. All you really have would be the Brave Token Engine and maybe Fenrir if you play it. But hey, a genius like 037 Wolf can definitely make it work, so go check out his channel and subscribe to him if you want some nasty Synchron videos. Anyways, number 5 belongs to Labyrinth. It is a fantastic deck that is well equipped to beat pretty much just everyone and can also play either hand traps or floodgates. You can also choose to play furniture or trap heavy, or actually mix both if you really want to. This deck also has one of the best game ones you will ever see out of everyone when it wins the dice roll, but at the same time, things can get dicey when it goes second. You always have to deck build for your worst matchups, but there's so much ground to cover. I also don't really believe that Labyrinth has a great purely matchup, which doesn't really play in its favor. Still an extremely good deck because despite all of that, I'm still putting it in the top 5. Number 4 is interesting because I might actually go back on it on the future, but it's Rescue Ace. It's a good deck, absolutely, but it's especially good because it's new and I feel like a lot of players won't really know how to beat it. People might interact with the deck incorrectly or side the wrong cards, which is really good for the Rescue Ace players. It's also a really good long-term investment because the deck is getting indirect support with Age of Overlord thanks to the Snake Eye and the Bellstar engine. I definitely recommend you to look into Rescue Ace in case you want to play it or maybe just counter it. Alright, from here on out things are getting insane. Number 3 is a potential tie between two decks that actually play the same engine. I am talking about the Chimera Engine, so Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beast, and Baphomet, which can be played by Kashtira and Branded. One single card gets you 4 interruptions, which is wild. And it also fixes a lot of the issues for Branded because now you don't really have to rely on Branded Fusion, and if you get ashed, it's not the end of the world. And for Kashtira, you finally have a really strong normal summon. I do believe that the Branded Chimera version is a little better because it actually has synergy since you're fusion summoning, whereas in Kashtira, it actually conflicts because you're XC summoning and you're fusion summoning. The Kashtira version still has a lot of really cool interactions, so for example, the Arizard can get back the Chimera Fusion from the Banished underneath, and then when the Arizard gets sent to the graveyard, the Chimera Fusion also goes back to the grave so that you can banish it and revive back another one of your monsters. But again, both of these decks are extremely difficult to play and build. This should be seen as a challenge and a positive thing because if you can figure it out, you're gonna be extremely rewarded. Unlike the number 2 deck, which I despise with all my heart, and of course it's pure Kashtira. I don't think it's that great personally, but unfortunately Arizard is a giant pain in the ass. It's really up to you whether or not you still want to keep playing that deck, but at the same time you have to know that with one single unicorn you're gonna go really far. But at the same time you're gonna be really mad against Labyrinth going second when they flip that Eradicator Virus against you. Dragon Link can also play Virus. And speaking of Dragon Link, I think it's a really good deck again, of course. I mean, it won Worlds, obviously, but I didn't really know where to place it in this top 10, so I guess I'm just gonna mention it as an honorable mention. And I guess the Bestials are also not really good against Purely and Kashtira, which I think are the best decks. But yeah, the best deck for the upcoming season does have to be Purely. I mean, Purely Noir just made the deck so much better because Sleepy Memory is actually now broken. It was always good, but now you're actually drawing upwards of 6 cards in your opponent's standby phase, which is unfair. And you're always gonna have access to Purely Noir on your opponent's turn thanks to Purely Yeep, which I actually think is really scary. The deck isn't perfect, of course, because it still loses really hard to Dimensional Barrier and a bunch of other cards, but at the same time, nobody's perfect, everyone has flaws. Overall, I do believe that this deck will be the deck to beat because a lot of the pro players will be playing Purely. I mean, just take a look at Chris LeBlanc, Hani, Kamal, and Pac. You know, it really speaks volume on how good the deck is if all those really good players are playing the same deck. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what you think are the best decks in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.